I mentioned it before and I'll say it again. Paul's words are very appropriate to today. And we're looking at chapter 3 of his letter to the Philippians. And in verse 10 he says, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection. I want you to focus on that thought. I want to know Christ. I want to know God. I want to know Jesus. I want to know him. It's very important that we start each day focusing in on him. My dog has a routine. I get up each day and I like to have a routine. And I have my little spot where I like to sit and have a few minutes. But my dog's routine interrupts my routine. He gets up in the morning, and it doesn't matter how you feel. Life is good. He's jumping, bouncing all over the place. We call him Buddy. He's our little buddy. He's a yappy little dog. He is an annoyance. He interrupts us on a continual basis, but he's our little buddy. And so I get up in the morning, and the first thing he does is he jumps all over me because he's happy to see me. And then I think, wow, gee, this is nice. Life is good. God loves me. Judy loves me. My dog loves me. Life is good. And then I go to sit down, and I want to have my little time. And he thinks that when I sit down, it's an invitation. And so he jumps right up, and he sits on me. And then he gives me this look, which tells me, pet me. Pet me. And if I don't pet him, he whimpers. And he looks at me. It's not good enough. And so I have to focus my attention on him. And I found that I have to give him a specific amount of time. And then he's content. And it makes all the difference in the world. Then he can run off and do his own thing. I have to focus my attention on him. I have to make a deliberate, intentional effort to focus my attention on him. Very important. Start each day by focusing intentionally on God. Let me share this story with you. I like to go golfing periodically, and I have a few friends that are very patient with me as I go golfing. Let me tell you this story about an anthill and an ant colony that made a very poor choice of where to locate their hill. They located it in one of the sand traps at Links, which is the golf course just north of Gimli. Not a good idea. And the eventuality took place. A ball landed in the sand trap on the ant colony. And the frustrated golfer went over and he whacked at the ball, and he missed the ball, and he destroyed half of the anthill. And he hit it again and again and again, not the ball, but the anthill. Just obliterating it. And the ants were panicking, and they were running all over the place. And finally, one worker ant said to another, if we're going to survive this onslaught, we're going to have to get on the ball. The golfer was probably me, because I periodically go into the rough or the sand traps. And my swing isn't all that great. You see, I have a reoccurring problem. And that is that I take my eye off the ball when I go to swing. And my friends, my fellow golfers, are very patient with me. And they just remind me very gently to keep my eye on the ball. Focus on the ball when I take my swing. But see, here my problem is this. When I go to swing, I'm looking at the ball, and then I'm looking at where I intend to hit the ball. And the thing that I have found out is that it never goes there. Because I'm not focusing on the ball. And so I have to do that now, in memory of that anthill. You know, if we want to accomplish something in life, if we have a goal, and we want to accomplish that goal in life, first thing is you have to identify the goal. What is the goal? You have to put it before you. One person said that he would write it on a post-it note and put it on the mirror, and the first thing he did in the morning, he looked up and he'd see that. You have to identify it, you have to put it before you, and then you've got to focus on it. You have to focus on it, or you're never going to get or accomplish your goal. Let me give you this example. A couple of years ago, after I finished high school, or high school finished with me, I had decided that I wanted to study management and get a government job. So I left this tiny little place in British Columbia and I moved to Ottawa, Ontario. And I applied at the University of Ottawa, and to my shock, they accepted me in their management program. And eventually I got my job in the government. You see, I had a goal. And I set it before me. And then I determined to follow on that goal. And these were components of my goal. Study management, get a job in the government. And it happened. It didn't happen by chance. It happened because I was intentional. And then later on, Judy and I decided we wanted to be pastors. And so we decided to leave Ottawa and to go to the Bible school, which was located at 2130 Bayview Avenue. I racked my brain for a week. Where did we go? 2130 Bayview Avenue. There's an interesting thing about this place. We actually lived on site, and there was this huge tower, and there was a cross on the tower. The cross was always lit. And we like to order pizza. So in the evening, we'd get together with some friends, we'd order some pizza. Where do you deliver the pizza? 2130 Bayview Avenue. Where's that? It's the building with the lit cross on it. They go, got it. So we went there. Now my intent was to learn the Bible. I don't know, to become some great theologian or something like that. But 2 points here. Number one is, we identified the goal. We set the goal before us. And then we intentionally worked towards accomplishing that goal. And we made the changes we had to make in our life to accomplish that goal. That's how you work towards goals. Paul had a specific goal. In the Bible, we read Paul's specific goal. In verse 10, he says, I want to know Christ. That's his purposeful goal. That's his intent. I want to know Christ. That was his goal. I want to know Jesus. Now, at first for me, when I went to university, I wanted to study management. What I didn't realize is that management is all about people. When you manage people. I wasn't there to learn about people. I was there to learn the skills and the techniques to manage. Made sense to me. I eventually understood that in order to understand how to manage, you got to learn how to manage people. You got to learn how to work with people. When I went to Bible college, my attitude hadn't changed a whole lot. I went to Bible college, and what did I go to learn? The Bible. I wanted to learn the Bible. I wanted to get as much information about the Bible, because I'm supposed to be teaching people about the Bible, so therefore I need to know the Bible. But then there was a shift in my focus, in my goal. And I came to this point where I said, no, my primary goal is to learn more about God and more about Jesus, because that's the focal point of the Bible. And so I went from just learning something to learning about someone. And that changed everything. Sure, I had gone to these different points in my life where I set goals and I worked towards accomplishing goals, but this is something I didn't understand as much then as I do today. In order to stick with it, in order to stick with my goal, our goal, I needed to do more than just learn about it. I needed to learn Jesus. I needed to know Jesus. I needed to know God. Because after 44 years, it's now, right, Judy? 44 years. That's incredible. I can't believe it. To be able to stick with something for 44 years, you can't do it. You can't do it unless you know the person who is asking you, who is calling you to do this. And I had to get to know Jesus. And that made all the difference in the world. Because you see, he became my motivation. He became my motivation. And when things got tough, and we all know in life things get tough. When things got tough, my motivation remained the same. And we could continue to make that choice. No, we're going to stick on this path because he has asked us to do this, and he is my motivation. He is our motivation. Life gets tough, doesn't it? I want you to think about this. Don't let anybody convince you that you're not valuable. Don't let anybody convince you that you're not important. Because to God, every single one of us is important. And this building is a testimony not to the design and the structure, even though it was well done, Phil. It's a testimony to the fact that people are important. People are valuable. Don't ever forget that. So when we went into management, let me give you this example. They asked us to go to Vancouver. You know all about that, some of you. We had 200 staff. We had 300 residents. That's a daunting task. But again, what I said, management isn't about techniques and skills. It's about people, right? And so we spent our first time there getting to know people. They call it management by walking around. Very technical term, right? Get out of the office and walk around. I'll tell you this, is that we were training people to take over from us eventually, and I had to go into one person's office and say, you're not going to make it. And he did not like me when I said that, but I told him, you're not going to make it. What's the problem here? I'm very good. I said, nobody knows you. You have 200 staff here. No one knows who you are. Your greatest asset is the people who work here. 60% of our budget went towards paying salaries. I said, your greatest asset is the people who work here. Nobody knows you. You don't know anybody. Unless you're willing to get out of your office and meet people. I don't have time. I said, then you're too busy for this job. Because you see, we made it a point of going out and visiting people. We made it a point of getting to know the people who worked with us. Not for us, but with us. We made it a point of getting to know who they were, to hearing about their family, to hearing about struggles, to hearing about their role, to hearing about their aspiration. And what we were doing there is we were developing a trust relationship. Isn't that important? A trust relationship. So they could trust us. I remember watching one morning on the news how a reporter was following a police officer while he was going around and doing his area. And in part of his area there were a lot of homeless people. And you could see the reporter was uncomfortable. What do we do? He said, just follow me, it's okay. And so they went in, and it was a very cold morning, and he would go up to, I don't know how you describe it, it's a tarp tent, I guess. It's a tarp tent. And he would go up to one after the other. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Are you okay today? Is there anything that you need? Okay, I'll check in with you later. And he would go from one to the next to the next. And he went to one tarp tent, and he said, hi, I'm so-and-so. Are you okay today? And there's a nice voice, woman's voice. I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Oh, I'm doing really well, thank you. Is there anything you need? No, I'm okay. Okay, good. I'll check in later on. Okay, thank you, she said. And as they were walking away, the police officer said to the reporter, he said, she hated me when I first started working here. The reporter looked, and because she was so pleasant. What did you do to change all of that? He said, every day I would just go up to her, and in the same voice, how are you doing? Is there anything you need? I'm available if you need me. And he said, I just gave it time. until she learned to trust me. She learned that she could trust me. You see? They built a relationship, learning to trust, a trust relationship. In a Christian community, we call each other brother and sister. That means that as brother and sister, we're related, we're connected with each other, which means that we need to spend time to get to know each other, to get to know the other people, and to allow a trust relationship to develop there so that we can connect. I was talking with Steve Bell on Thursday. Thank you. I'm so glad Judy's here because I would forget half of it. I have a chance, I had a chance to go back in and talk with him because my excuse is, can I pray with you? But I wanted to talk with him too, And so I'm talking, Steve and I are talking, and he was saying how he's found it so difficult because people don't come to the concerts anymore. And he said people don't come to church like they used to. And he said, that's really sad. He said, the pandemic was really hard in the church because, you see, church is incarnational. You know what incarnational is? Incarnational. We get together. And for 2 years we were told, no, you can't get together. But he said, that's what church is all about, right? It's getting together to support one another. It's getting together to encourage one another, to build one another up. And we couldn't do that. And he said it was really hard for me. And I could tell that because Steve Bell, if you haven't really noticed, he's a very personable individual. He loves to connect with people. We were sitting here on Thursday night listening to him, and around 9 o'clock, an hour and a half after he started, he said, well, I guess I should wrap things up. And I was going, already? And then I looked at the time and I went, it's 9 o'clock? It felt like I'd been sitting in his living room as he shared his music and his stories with us. I was blessed by it. I was really encouraged by it. So we were made to live in relationship with each other, to build those trust relationships together. But we're also made to live in relationship with God. And when we do that, when we follow through on that goal, what happens is that it builds trust in us for Him. It builds trust in us for Him. And as I mentioned earlier, by getting to know Jesus before getting into ministry, we trusted Him enough that He would see us through all of the difficult times that came our way. We're relational people. John Donne put it there in his book. He said this, he said, no man, no person is an island entire of itself. Every person is a place of the continent, a part of the main. If a clog were to be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. We are important. We're valuable. Don't ever anybody let them convince you otherwise. But getting to know God helps us to realize that we're important, that we're valuable, and it helps us to learn to trust in Him. I don't know if anybody remembers, there was a play done a number of years ago, 1972, called Godspell. You remember that? Yeah. There were a number of songs that came out of that. A couple of songs, Prepare You the Way of the Lord was one, Save the People. But does anybody remember this one, Day by Day?
Yes.
Hey, you remember that? This is how it goes. Day by day, oh dear Lord, dear things I pray, to see Thee more clearly, love Thee more dearly, follow Thee more nearly, day by day. You remember that? But there's a lot of theology and thought in those verses. Listen to the order. He says, I pray first to see You more clearly, to get to know You, to build this trust relationship. Secondly, to love You. Once I get to know You, I know how much You love me and care for me, and I will respond in kind by loving You. And then thirdly, now that I know You and I love You and I trust You, I follow You. See, that's the order, how it goes. Like I said before, we went to Bible college and I went to learn the Bible. Then I realized, no, I wanted to know the person who the Bible was about. And I got to know Jesus much better. I refocused my learning. And in learning Jesus, I learned how much he loved me. And that became my motivation throughout the years to follow him. Our motivation. It's so important to have that motivation. It's so important to stay in love with Jesus. Listen to this statement. Satan will do whatever he can to deter us from loving God. Because he realizes that when we love God and we trust God, he can't take us away from that. But what he wants to do then is he wants to change our commitment to God by distracting us. And he'll do whatever he can to distract us from spending time with God so that our love for God will grow cold. And he does this through luxuries, hardships, disappointments, and distress. The words of Jesus in Luke chapter 8, verse 7, he's talking about the parable of the sower. And he said, other seeds fell among the thorns which grew up and choked up the plants. And then he explained this to the disciples. He said, the seed, or the Word of God, or that seed of wanting to know God, it falls among the thorns, and that stands for those people who hear it, but when they go on their way, they allow it to be choked out by life's worries, riches, and pleasures. And they never mature. They never grow. Here's a statement. I think you've heard this statement. There's two statements, actually. You heard this one here. Absence makes the heart grow fond. I love that one, don't you? But you know, there's a contradictory statement which is just as true. Absence makes the heart look yonder. The two of them are true. And they're very contradictory. Let me give you an example. This is a story about a young soldier and his wife, Edith. And they were married just before World War I. And he was conscripted into the army and he was sent off to fight in Europe. And they had committed that every time that they could, they would sit down and they would write a letter to each other. And then when they get these letters, they would read them and reread them over and over again. And their love and commitment stayed strong. But here's what happened. As a result of the continuous tragedy of the war, it played on the mind and the heart of this young soldier. And he started to become very angry and bitter. And his love grew cold. He was wounded in the battle and he was sent back to England to recuperate. And his wife Edith went and visited him every day and spent time with him. But he wouldn't even acknowledge that she was there. And finally one day he blurted out, if only you had seen the terrible things that I have experienced, you would understand. I think we're finished. I can't go on like this anymore. But she continued to visit. And one day she brought a stack of letters that he had written to her. And she left them beside him. And she left him to think. And eventually he reached over and he picked up a letter and he started reading it. And then he read the next one and the next one. And he remembered the love that he had in his heart for her and the love that she always had for him. And slowly it rekindled the spark within his heart. And it drew him out of his pain and it drew him out of his suffering. You see, love changed everything for him. This is the story of the author J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the books Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The books are about all of the horrors that he experienced in war. But the books can be summed up in two themes. The one thing. It's love versus hate. Love versus hate. And in his book, if you've ever read it or watched the movie, I don't know if you noticed, love wins. Love wins. Love is stronger than hate. It changed his life. Edith's love for him changed him. What I'm telling you about is this. Do not let the things of this life choke out the memory of how much God loves you and how much God cares for you and how He can make a difference in your life. Don't let the pain of this life cause your love to grow cold. Don't let Satan win. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26. Paul gives us these instructions. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Do not give the devil a foothold. Now, when I think about that, don't let the sun go down in your anger. Sometimes I'm looking, I go, oh, I got very little time. I got to get this right. I got to straighten things out. My motivation is because I love Him, and He told me this is best for me, and I'm going to do that. And James said this, submit yourself then to God. Resist the devil, and he will run away from you. He'll flee from you. And then come near to God, and He will come near to you. That's the thing you have to do. Love versus hate. Love can win if we let it. We can have this desire in our heart like the psalmist who said in Psalm 63, You, O God, are my God, and earnestly I seek you, and I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. So I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, starting each day with God. Starting each day with God. And the words of Paul in the Amplified Version, for my determined purpose is to know Christ. My determined purpose, my intention every day when I get up is to know Him better every day. Is to spend a little bit of time. And you might say, well, you're a minister, therefore you spend hours and hours of time with God. No, I don't. I wish I would, but I don't. What I'm talking about is taking a little bit of your day and intentionally saying to yourself, I'm going to spend this time just with God. Just me and God. And it'll make all the difference in the world. I read this the other day. I really like this statement. What you focus on expands. What you focus on grows. And this, intentional living is the bridge between good intentions and good action. I will take one good action over thousands of good intentions. That makes all the difference in the world. So my encouragement today is that we be personal, purposeful, and intentional on getting to know God better. Oh, I'm already a Christian. I've been a Christian for many, many years. Well, listen to what Paul said, and I'm going to just sum it up in this. He said, not that I've already arrived or already obtained all of this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward.